All right. Welcome, everyone. It's 4 p.m. sharp, and I'm sure people will be filtering in at the end of the day, wrapping up their work and sitting down for this chat, and also getting maybe a tea or coffee to keep them going. One might say, Vandana, in a joke that you need some tea or coffee to get you through research management and grants management. But we hope we can simplify it a little bit for our young investigators, and let's see how this conversation goes. So welcome everyone to II Huddle 2, where we are going to be talking with Vandana about understanding the sanction order, understanding research grants and funding in a ever-changing landscape of doing science in India. Vandana is the Principal Technical Officer, Grants and IPR at IISER Pune. And she's had a very interesting career in itself, which you can read more about. She's also an Wellcome Trust India Alliance, Wellcome DBT India Alliance, IRMI Research Management grantee. And I think one of the very few people in this space in India. So thank you, Vandana, for giving us your time. We look forward to the discussion. And as people are filtering in, I can say that I'm going to probably start it, and then we're going to have to deal with the questions in the chat window and the Q&A box. So feel free to keep typing in your questions. We understand that they may be very unique to your situation. I'll start with an anecdote in a few seconds. So whether you're a university, research institute, national institute, you're getting foreign funding, Indian funding, startup funding, grant funding, it may be very specific to your situation, but do type it in, and we will take them even if they're tailor-made to your situation, because we understand that grant and research is going to depend on where you're located, right? So to start with the anecdote of when I was a young investigator at a state university, and this is how diverse, broad, and heterogeneous the research management landscape in India is, and Vandana would agree. When people said, your RDO will do this, and I said, we have nothing like a research development office or grant management office. It's a desk and one accountant who pushes the papers. That was as far as grant management went. So anything more than that was sort of heavenly. It was too good. So it's really where you are situated. And then, of course, when I moved to NCBS, you have a full-fledged research development office, well-staffed, different buckets of work, from sourcing opportunities to managing opportunities to post-grant support. So that's how diverse the landscape is, Vandana, in India. So welcome. And as I promised, it will be no slides. This is going to be a no slide session. So I'll leave it with that. And let's get into the conversation. And please keep the chat window active with your questions. We are going to stop and take them intermittently. We want to keep it very interactive. So let's start on a good note, Vandana. Let's start with this first question. Okay, the young investigator, one among all of us, has received the grant, or at least has received a sanction order on email, which itself is, cause of great happiness. The money will follow. But what should we first look for when we get that sanction order? What are the quick things one should keep in mind when you've received a sanction order?
Okay, so thanks, Karishma, for inviting me here. And I'm really happy that we are talking about the young investigators are interested to understand more nuances about the finance and the sanction order and the aspects of grants management. So before we talk about the sanction order at IISER Pune, I always, get that the researchers, they have a less understanding about a notification of the award, right, which is an award email, versus a sanction order email versus a release order. Okay. So let me define these three, clarify it for all the viewers here. So the first email notification, which is received from a funder that we have selected your project for funding, and now these are the requirements which we request you to look into, provide the support documents. That is a notification of the award. The second email which is received is for the sanction of the project, whereby there is a sanction letter which indicates the amount sanctioned against different budget items, right? That is a sanction order. third letter which is released, it may be combined with the sanction order also, in which it states out of that first year sanctioned amount, what are we releasing to you, right? The amount against different items. So please try to understand these three are different contexts. Now, yes, a researcher would be very happy with the award and would like to see and also start as soon as possible. But what my advice is, look at this amount sanctioned vis-a-vis what you proposed in the beginning, right? Also look at is it awarded to you? Sometimes it's very rarely is where the name on the award letter is different. So you may not pay attention to it, but at later stage when you're asking for some, other requests whereby there is a need to again look at this award letter and change it, right? If you are asking for extension and all, there will be a problem in resolving it. So look at the award letter is in your name, is in the name of your organization. And if there are any collaborators, they are listed correctly. That is one. Also see the budget is in line with what you had proposed. Though in many cases, you will see the budget is cut, right? You need to see if the budget is cut, is it really possible for you to execute the project? So here I'll share a case study. A very young investigator who just joined the organization applied for a project. At the project stage, the investigator said, I want an equipment which is above 1 crore. It's not available in IISER Pune. I need that. So my entire budget, even if I only get this one equipment, I'll be happy with it. I tried to convince that person, what if it is not sanctioned, right? Institute will only get overhead and equipment. Then what will we be able to help you with? Then the PI at least listened to me and asked for some other things also. And it so happened that that equipment was not sanctioned, right? And then there was a very little amount of money which was sanctioned. So the PI has to look for alternate sources of funding. Now, within that, because it is required, you need to access that equipment somewhere else, right? You need to do those experiments. So check it out vis-a-vis to the equipment. Second thing is about the human resource, what you had asked for, what is sanctioned. Also, it is important that you ask for salary norms as per the current norms. So it gives me immense happiness that now the Ministry of Finance has further revised the salary of the human resource on project, which is JRF, SRF, and research associate. So, and this is effective from 1st of January this year. Very soon, we will be seeing an OM from the Department of Science and Technology. So henceforth is where we should ask for the current norms. So what will happen to the new projects which will be processed? It will be, of course, people will be asking for the current norms. The old ones the sanction need to be revised by the funders. Okay. Yeah.
I see.
So that is where you should look at it. The third one is where if you have, a human resource, if you have asked for it, what I feel is if you get a desired human resource, you are paying salary as per the current norms, then half your worry is over. The remaining half worry is to prove your research hypothesis, right?
Yes.
So that is where you should really pay attention because human resource is a very crucial requirement for your project. And here I will say for the running projects, like if you get a project, whatever sanction order you have obtained now, it will be in line with the old norms, right? Whatever the human resource salary norms are. So what you need to do is you need to request the funder to amend that order. Earlier at my organization, we were not doing that. We were, whatever money it was, we were, because it is sanctioned from the government of India, that at the time of settlement of project, we will get the balance funds released, is where with this strategy we were moving forward. It led to a huge negative balance in the projects. Yes. And that is where the CAG audit, which is done by the central government auditors, controller and auditor general team, they raised an objection and this became a serious issue that it went to the parliament also. So post which is we changed the policy whereby we only give the money if it is the revised sanction order is there, if funds are available. So that is where it is important for the host institutes to communicate to the funder that we require the revised funds because it is to be implemented for both new as well as running project.
Okay.
So that is where the sanction order is very important.
So you mean, Vandana, now the most recent DSTOM that has revised the rates for JRF, SRF research, for projects that are currently ongoing, they can request that excess amount?
Yeah, they should request that excess.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. This is important to know.
Right.
This is very important to know because current manpower should also be paid as per the OM once it is in effect.
Right.
Right. So this is great. This is why we have these huddles basically to talk about contemporary topics so that they can benefit everyone. So another thing, Vandana, while questions are filtering in, let's talk broadly. Sanction order. How else can research development offices facilitate an individual PI's project? From pre-award, post-award, what else can a PI approach the office for help with?
Okay. So a research development office is an office which is actually a link between the leadership and the PIs, right?
I see. Okay.
So the leadership is where this is one way in which it is, there are multiple departments. Each department has its heads. Heads have to recommend something. Whereas if you have a research development office, right, in which the people know who are the other people in the organization, whether they are regular or not, whether their grant applications can be supported or not. So
Yes.
that saves time. So RDO recommends the project proposals for funding directly to the Dean R&D. So I'm talking about endorsement letter. So that is usually getting a letter endorsed by Dean R&D or by the HOD might be a time consuming task.
Yes.
You have to submit it well before many days before the deadline, right?
Very
Whereas if you have a dedicated person, right, who if asked for certain documents, if you provide it, then you can get it facilitated. So that is one. Okay. Another thing is it's via the same office which will facilitate the signing of the agreements. Mm-hmm. So the agreements, it might be at the pre-award stage, it might be at the post-award stage also. So why at the pre-award stages when I'm talking about if the funder is an industry, industry would like to sign a non-disclosure agreement first. Before even getting to, talking to you, what is the project they are interested in.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So these are the agreements which will require, can be done in a very faster mode with the RDO. And then there are certain things, in the pre-award stage, whereby a new faculty who has come, let's say from any part of the world may not know which are the funders in the domain, right? They may talk to other people in the organization. It is good to talk to other faculty and get an idea about it. But in order to know if the institute is registered with that organization, right? Or if it is not registered, then how the institute can be registered? There are a lot of documentation requirements for an organization to be registered so that it can benefit from the grant or it can benefit from the donation. So this aspect is also taken care by a grants office or by a RDO. So Karishma, please stop me at any point of time if you want to, because these are, many, this is like,
lots of things. This is your everyday.
Yeah.
So we get it. So maybe also you mean like registered as in like not for profit, like IndiaBioscience says that provide a letter that you're a not for profit or a DSIR recognized lab or things like that. That kind of certification. Okay. So there's a great question from Raghu. Vandana, let's take that. And then we have questions up on top as well. But let's take this one from Raghu. He says, I want to start a wet lab component as part of my computational group. So he's a computational biologist, but he wants wet lab to start. Apart from equipment, is there a cap on consumables that can be earmarked? Some say that consumables can be only 10% of your total budget, but he would want more consumables in one go because he's setting up. Is there a cap on consumables?
No. There's no cap. See, there's no cap on consumables. Some people, I mean, can think that they don't need an equipment. For example, a theoretical physicist, has already a workstation. So they may only require people to work, probably, some books, right? Now, if the theoretical physicists want to start experiments, so they have to set up an infrastructure. They
Correct.
might be asking for massive equipment money. Again, I am telling you, if you like this PI who asked for entire project almost like under equipment, you have to convince the committee that they would like to invest in your idea, in your research idea, and also to support your infrastructure requirement, right? If they get convinced, they can give you what you are asking for, but you need to create a track record to convince them, right? So now is whereby who will be guiding you in those experimental things? Have you found a mentor, right, for it?
Okay.
So these are the things. Otherwise, if you are writing an ongoing project, I mean, and first time or another time, what usually is, if it's an Inspire grant, then it is already capped. It's, even though it's a research grant money, 35 to 45% can be used for equipment. It's already stated. 5% can be used for contingency, 5% for travel, and 1 or 2 international. So you have to see the provisions of the grant. Carefully check the provisions of the grant, what you are applying for. Sometimes they indicate this is the percentage amount under equipment, this is the percentage amount, and this is more oftenly seen in international grants. They usually do not provide equipments. They don't want to provide. They will provide international travel money, right? Exchange meetings, human resources, they'll provide. Some may provide, like CFIPRA provides equipment money. So carefully study what it is. If it is not there, then is where try to speak to people who have got those grants at what stage of their career. That is also very essential. Because after applying, you will be waiting for at least 9 months to 1 year, right, to hear from them.
Yes, that's a long time.
Right.
He also says that it is awkward to give a justification, for what exactly you are going to need this equipment. So what's the best way to go about that?
Right. So again, you will have to seek a mentoring at the very beginning. If you are getting into an experimental domain, which is not your domain, justification is very, very crucial. And also along with whether that equipment already exists in the institute. If it exists, then why you are asking for it?
Exactly. True. Yeah. Very true. Or if you can rent it from a neighboring incubation park or something like that.
Yes.
We'll need to justify. Just shifting gears back to the DST-OM. I know this is a buzz. Indian science is a buzz with this new announcement. Shalini asked, since it's being implemented from 1/1/2023, 1st Jan 2023, are projects now eligible for arrears? Projects in Jan, Feb, March, April?
Yes, it is eligible for arrears. That is where your organization actually should put in a request, or you can also put in a request to your program advisors that how we can claim arrears for the period which has already gone.
I see.
So basically, I think it would be good to ask for the revised sanction order, number 1, and also to ask for the areas for the gone period. So that the awardees should ask the funder. Just wait for it, because the current circular is from Ministry of Expenditure, right? And that is in request to DST only. So very soon we'll be seeing a DST OM also.
Okay.
So once that is online, then is where all young investigators awarded should contact their program advisors.
Okay. That sounds good. So first, the revised sanction order is what we can all work on,
Yeah.
So coming to sources of funding now, Vandana, clubbing a few questions. Colleague Sendhu Raja says, can a government scientist could mean anything, DRDO to IISER Pune, so we may need some details. Can a government scientist get funds from an international organization? This is one question. The second question, Vandana, is Aditya Sharma, that I've recently joined as an Indian private university's offshore campus, say somewhere in the Middle East. So while it is an Indian university, we can't apply for CSIR, DBT, etc., because it's an offshore campus. But similarly, you can't apply for local funding also from these Middle Eastern governments, for example. So what is the option? Only international grants or private companies? What are the kind of private companies or agencies that will fund this kind of situation?
Okay. So yeah, so there are two questions here. One is for a Indian investigator who is looking for non-government sources of fund, more so international funds. So yes, there are many international funds you could tap into based on what research you are looking at. So I'll be sharing few examples here. So the first one is DST has partnerships with different countries under bilateral research and development. So you can check it on the DST site. These are, Indo-Japanese, Indo-Russian, Indo-Korean. So they have, and 1 month ago is where this time I saw that DST has, arranged for an entire 12-month program for its various funding calls. It's already on the website. When is it opening? When is it closing? What it is catering to? So check it out. You will need an international partner for it to apply for it. So this is the funding you should look at it. The second funding you can also look at it is international funders like Simon's Foundation. So if you look at Simon's Foundation site, you will look at, they give funding for various kinds of programs under life sciences, mathematical sciences, physical sciences, as well as if you wish to conduct symposia and conferences. For example, NCBS for last 3 years was doing it, right? Professor Bhalla was doing it. This time is where IISER Pune is doing it, right? So what we have to now, in order to get funds from these international funders, actually it's not easy, because what they do is they want to ascertain the organization has to be not for profit, right? And what is the mandate of that organization? For example, IISER Pune mandate is education and research. So we have to give them all supporting documentation. We have to answer a lot of their queries. So that is where an RDO will help. It took us 3 months, in which initially we provided the documentation. Initially we provided email IDs of our leadership. Then one leadership had to, ascertain that yes, this leadership is a true leadership, it exists. Another leadership email had to ascertain that. Post which there was an equivalency determination of not-for-profit organization done by a third party, which had a huge documentation in which we had to respond to their queries and provide all those documentation. So I'm giving you just an example. There are a lot of other international funders like EMBO, Young Investigator Program. There is HHMI, right? Fellowship program. So these all are open to providing funds because India is a member of EMBO, right? Associate partner. So all these will provide funds for it. But in these is where, as a young investigator, it becomes really challenging if you don't have a grants office, because then all this work you will have to do it yourself.
Exactly. No, I mean, that's Herculean.
Yeah.
That's virtually impossible to take on.
Right.
Yeah,
So we
without a
don't
grants
want to,
office.
yeah, exactly. So I think there are a lot of international funds you could tap into it. Then another category of funds which are slowly now increasing in India are the endowments funds. So what are these endowment funds? These are basically donations which are given by rich people, philanthropists, or your alumni. In India, IITs are at the forefront of getting a lot of donations. Recently in Twitter, I saw that Nilekani, who is an IIT Bombay alumni, so he's a co-founder of Infosys. He has donated 300 plus crores to IIT Bombay unrestricted fund. They can use it in any program which their board approves, right? So
this is though, Vandana, this is to an institute.
Right.
Can an individual PI get philanthropic funds?
Yes, very much. An institute and an individual can also get philanthropic fund. So I'll share with you and all of you a site which is called CSR Box. So just Google CSR Box, you will see a site. This is a compilation of all philanthropic organizations who are providing funds under corporate
See,
social responsibility, right?
okay.
So they
Okay.
have, there are sites of all those funders. If you click it, it will take you to that funder site. Then they have listed the programs they are supporting. So if you qualify under it, then is where definitely an individual. So we have got funds for an individual researcher he's doing research in cancer, or
Okay.
who is doing research, in the field work, whereby tribal community is going to be supported. So just one needs to see if you qualify their area of work, then one can apply.
So this is a great point you touched upon, Vandana, CSR funds. Most of us understand what it is, but there's also this angle that while every company can have a mandate that we want to support, say, tribal field work or something, they can't really directly benefit from that work. So how does the PI draw the line there? Because they can't really dictate, right, what work is to be done or.
So normally, like for example, under HCL Foundation, if you will see, they are giving to one single organization, which is the project may be driven by a single PI, 5 crores fund. So for 3 years project. So there the deliverables are clearly to be stated. If
Okay.
those deliverables are accepted by the board, then it is direct. Now, in contrast to it, I mean, people here in IISER, we have received funds from very simple companies through networking, right? Because 2% of the profit, a company is supposed to invest under CSIR. So they may be giving it to people they know, or they may, if they have a large fund, then they have created those websites for that. So these funds are, Karishma, directly available to the researcher, but many a times, if the money is a lot, then is where you need a lot of tie-ups with the organization to deliver the project timely. Because CSR has another criteria where funds have to be utilized within the period in which they are released.
Okay, that is March 31st.
Yes.
So same as a grant, basically.
So in the grant is where if you are leftover funds, they get carry forwarded to the next year, right? Which a funder usually does, but under CSR, their board has to approve it. So
okay, the board
automatically does not happen.
Right. Not that now even in grants it's automatically happening. There's a lot of work to carry forward it. March 31st is that day in the year. We may forget our birthdays and wedding anniversaries, but Indian PIs won't forget March 31st. It's etched in our mind. Okay. So Yaminidhar already has another question. Can PIs from private universities get CSR funds?
So yes, people from private universities, as long as your mandate is charitable and it is to support the improving the livelihood or sustainability, right, of the people of the country, definitely
can. Okay. Darshan asks a question which is going to take us now to hopefully segue a little to do a thorough study of ZBSA, the other buzzword in Indian science at this current time. But that's a beautiful segue. Darshan asks, why is there a delay in getting funds from sanction order? We get the notification email, you beautifully walked us through. Sanction order aa gaya. Why is there a delay? Some of our faculty are facing this issue. Why is there a delay from sanction order to release? Okay. What is happening that we don't know at the end of the funding agency?
So the delay is happening because the funders, they don't have money. That is the main reason for delay. That is number one. Second is for a project which is newly sanctioned, that is always at the top priority of the funder. More so if it is close to the financial year, because they would like to finish the funds allocated in that financial year.
Correct.
So you would see that a lot of projects, they get sanctioned as well as funds released close to the end of the financial year. Right? Yes. So now with ZBSA coming in, I believe there will be a streamlining of the funds release will be happening, because with ZBSA, government will not face the fund crunch.
Okay, why is that so? So what is ZBSA? What is the new buzz on the block?
Right. So what is ZBSA is actually means by which government can have a real control and see what funds are available with the donors it has given it to. So earlier what happened is we used to get funds, we used to keep it with us, use it, right? Unless we give a expenditure statement to the funder, they have no idea to know what is the balance available with the organizations, right? But now with ZBSA, what government has done is ZBSA zero balance subsidiary account.
Okay. Okay.
So all of us, we have opened a account, right, which is monitored by a CNA, Central Nodal Agency.
Okay.
For each scheme, government has assigned a Central Nodal Agency. It has opened a bank account. Under that same bank is where the institutes who will receive funds under that same scheme have also opened. So these are linked. So what happens is government gives not funds now. Government is not giving funds to anybody. Government is giving an assignment of funds, just like how you have a credit limit. It is defining a limit which can be spent in a given financial year period. Okay. It is giving an assignment to be assigned to a funder, and who it is telling? It is telling CNA to do that. So CNA then, since it has excess, it assigns that amount to our account, so institute account, right? So what happens is on 31st March, whatever is not used, it automatically goes back, becomes zero.
Okay.
And then even you don't have to do anything. For example, this year we saw that DST automatically gave back that fund on 7th of April to us. Whereas few other funders said that you give us a statement that what is the amount which you have under your scheme. They just wanted to reconcile. So interestingly is where I started getting release orders for the new projects. I'm talking about release order, matlab funds are received, assignments are received, as well as I started getting fund assignment for the running projects as early as May, which never used to happen earlier. Because government had to wait for tax collection. Once it receives tax collection, it has to give to different ministries, right? Proportionately, based on their quarterly assignment or monthly assignment. But now, whatever it is from the previous year, government might have received, already seen there are a lot of balance assignment unutilized. So it could easily utilize into this year. So that is what this is a very transparent method, and this is going to accelerate the pace by which research funds are supposed to be provided to the organizations.
So this makes sense now that you've broken, because till we had only statement of expenditure, they were blind to what the balance was.
Right.
Now, because they withdrew it on 31st March, they had an estimate and they could release it immediately. You said as early as 7th April or pretty early, pretty quickly. Okay, so do you believe ZBSA is here to stay? From what you understand?
Yes. Actually, creating ZBSA and implementing it took almost 1 year for the government.
Okay.
Right? So it was a lot of work, and also to understand which policy will not work, which policy will work. I mean, it itself is very difficult, you know. It was cumbersome, but now it has been made easy for institute as well. It's definitely going to stay, because the purpose, once we see the purpose, I was really shocked that without sending a statement of expenditure, just with a declaration, this is the amount of balance in each project, and in combined together, multiple projects in a one scheme is this balance. The funder just reconciled and then automatically not only allowed carry forward balance, but also gave release for this year partly too. Because partly because they want SCUC from us, right, which will take some time to give, but part payment for this year already they released. So it is really good. It is really good for the people who are employed on the project, so that they can get continuation salary, and it can be a continuation of research expenditures.
So this was my next question. Will this ZBSA method also apply to fellowships, like faculty fellowships like Ramalingaswamy, Ramanujan, Inspire?
It applies to everything. It applies to everything.
All funding, assignment of funding from the government.
All central sector schemes, which covers Inspire Fellowship, Students Fellowship, they are all under this. Student Fellowship, I think, are still not DBT student fellowship and all, but Prime Minister Research Fellowship is already under this, Inspire Fellowship is under this, Ramanujan Fellowship, Ramalinga Swami, they're already under ZBSA.
So this is a potential game changer for continuation of manpower funds, because that has been a major bottleneck in science in India, right?
Right.
I mean, one thing about grant money, but one thing to keep people unpaid for 3 months and 4 months.
Right.
Absolutely. So this could potentially transform
This
that.
could potentially, and like how Ministry of Education saw it, right? And they
Correct.
understood that they have to put this principle into effective use and also release this year money, which they convinced the funder to release. The same now needs to be reciprocated by all other ministries also. Otherwise, if they still need SCUC, then what good is that information which is already there with them?
Yes, exactly. This was the next question, Vandana, that are we seeing the end of SCUC?
So we should see, I mean, we SCUC, I mean, we should see, SCUC won't go away. What I feel like now, since government has tiny details under that scheme, they can monitor who it is to be paid. We should actually reduce the huge amount of documentation which is required. We should only be asking for single document, which is 2-page UCG FR12. So that if government accepts, then I think it's going to be easy for all our organizations to, and also for researchers. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Great, Vandana. That was very wonderful, a nice 10 minutes talk. I feel better about understanding it. Yeah, especially coming from you. So let's go to another question. Bharat asks a question. Also, Raghu asks before that, on the topic of international grants, I want to register his organization at NIH eCommons, but he's unable to do so because they don't have a grants office. This is a challenge with a lot of private universities, state, central. They don't really have a grants office. So when I give the person's email ID who deals with extramural research, what should I do? There is no grants office. How do they register at NIH eCommons?
Okay. So what you do then, that brings me to the point, how was IISER managing when Vandana Gambhir was not there in IISER Pune? Right?
Correct, exactly.
So the initial pioneers, what they were doing, they were going to the director and saying, this is a funder we would like to apply to. They require institute administrator because it has to play a role. So what should we do? You as a director are very busy, we understand. So the director then said, you put yourself only, your email ID, right?
Okay.
And complete the process, and whatever documentation you require, signatures, I will give. So do the same method. And when you get somebody as in RDO or grants office, then is where that person, you can add that email ID and transfer the responsibility. So that is what we too did.
Okay, yes, absolutely. Bharat asks another question. Is it mandatory for projects to include human resources?
It is not at all mandatory. You can ask for, let's say a project is, you can, like we know how much CRG will fund 35 lakhs project, or, if it is a institute like IISER, it might fund 65 lakhs project for a young investigator. You have to decide what all you have, what all you need. If you are getting excellent JRF from the institute funding project, then ask for equipment, ask for other measures. But if your funder is not giving you fund for international travel, it doesn't make sense to ask for it. So read the guidelines. Yeah. So definitely you can, some people I have seen after they have established their labs, they only ask for funds for consumable, maximum funds for consumables. No human resource, no equipment, only contingency, consumables, and travel. That's all. And overheads, right? So yes, definitely tailor-made it as per to what your requirement is.
So coming to these heads of release of funds, Vandana, when it comes to contingency, what really is contingency? What does it mean? Can it include travel? Can it include conference registrations? This is a very nebulous area.
Right. So contingency, as the name suggests, it is a fund which is not, you don't know, right? What you might utilize for, need. So just to meet that requirement, and it is always, close to 5% of your total budget. And because contingency is a recurring head, right? Is where you can utilize for any recurring cost. For example, short-term human resource hiring, any repair or maintenance work, right? If you want to have a license of a software for just 1 year, then also it will cover it. Any travel, any registration. So all recurring items can be covered under it. You cannot buy any equipment. That is the
Under
only
contingency.
limitation. Yeah. Rest all
This is
everything
this is a revelation. We can even put manpower under contingency.
yes, you can.
Okay.
Short-term
Okay.
human resource you can hire from contingency.
Like interns or, like, yes, yeah, absolutely. Wow. I'm realizing this 6 months too late, but that's okay. Let everyone else benefit from the knowledge. So another thing, Vandana, when it comes to overheads, is this something that we just write off to the institute? Is there something we can do with it?
Okay.
So sort of, can we channelize it back to saying use the overhead for my lab repair or something like that?
Okay. So overheads are supposed to be for the institute, which is providing you all the support which is required. The support might be administrative in nature, or the operational support, or the infrastructure, or the operation running cost, right? If the organization is really well funded, right, then they will take away the overhead into their corpus. And corpus will further support the institute capacity building. It might be building more buildings, or hiring specialized human resource and all. After a certain point of time, the institute, if it wishes to incentivize the faculty or researchers to get more and more grants, then they can come up with a policy that they will give away a percentage of overheads back to the PI to spend it for research. So that's what IISER also did it. We are giving back 30% of the overhead amount back to the PI.
In the form of?
In the form of a most flexible grant. So this is where it can be utilized for equipment as well. It can be utilized for any recurring budget. So you can do anything with it. And if you have not spent in that year, it gets carried forwarded to the next year. So this is the most useful kitty which a researcher can have.
Absolutely. So, I mean, many institutes may not have this policy, but young investigators here can potentially propose this, talk about it, and make this kind of change. So it's a sort of a little corpus for the PI.
Exactly.
If you say it can be carried over to the next year,
right?
That sounds like a nice little kitty.
And that's a very good incentive. So after that is where PI also became very careful. Oh, they have to ask for overheads, right? Normally overhead, they think it is going to be taken by the institute. Correct. So they were not worried to see if this funding allows overhead or not. So now is where they are also, ultimately whatever an institute build is to strengthening research and education. So it's like a cycle.
So this is also very revealing, because I was under the impression overhead is for electricity and repair of the elevator and to get water into the department. Maybe they do use it for that.
It is, but if an institute wants to incentivize research, they should think about such policies, because that will lead to increase in overhead. So why not share part of the overhead amount?
Yes,
with
absolutely.
the researchers.
Absolutely. In a manner that could, better the entire.
And also another thing is also, sometimes PI will come to the leadership. I have X amount of grant. I need X plus 1, small amount. Can you give me? You don't have to go then. You have the most flexible funds with you.
Exactly. This is a great idea. Maybe some young investigators can take it forward. So Vandana, moving on, we talked a little bit about international grants. There is a lot of, I won't say concern, but opacity related to foreign funding rules in India. It's one thing that they do a check on us, like they want not for profit and other things, but even we may need to check what the sources of that funding is, especially if it's foundations and think tanks and like working groups. So does India have any guidelines for foreign funding rules? What should your institute make sure before receiving the money?
Right. So here I'll give 2 examples here. One is with the DST partnership. If you are applying to a bilateral program, then all the agreements Government of India has already done with those funders. They have carefully figured it out what will happen to the IP. right? Who will
Okay.
own the
Okay.
IP and all.
Mhm.
So then you don't have to worry about it. But if you are getting into working with the funder, for example, like AOARD, so we have some of the people here in physics who get funded by it. So when we were applying to the first time is where they gave me a 200-page of documentation to read their policy on accounting.
Mhm.
Another 100-page document to read their policy on project management. And under that, what and how IP will be shared and all those things. So somebody in the administration should be capable, or they can outsource it to legal firm to bring it to their attention. What are the points of concern they should discuss with the leadership? So
Okay. Okay.
definitely getting international funds is important, but not getting it blindfoldedly, because you don't want that your rights to the research outcome, you should give it to them. You may want to further continue to do research in that field. So you definitely want right to utilize that research for research, and if possible, a joint partnership in the outcome.
Okay, so this is another dimension you've brought forth, the ownership of the research. But
Yes.
also, where is that foundation getting money from?
That you can easily see on
Uh-huh.
their website. If you will see, for example, like HHMI, there are some programs which are funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they have given the operational, responsibility to an organization, right? Some are funded by Wellcome Trust. So one must see from where these people are going to be funded. Many international funders, for example, like IDRC, International Development Research Corporation, it gets funded by Canadian federal government. So that this like an Indo-Canadian, they have funding actually many countries, right? But they always want that there should be a partnership. So they won't fund a single PI in India directly. That should be, it should be more like a partnership with a Canadian also PI.
Okay.
Right. So that
like
is how, yeah.
DST bilaterals.
Right. So over there, you will see some of the programs they have funded. You can now, since there are so many social platforms to interact with people, try to engage with people and talk to them. What is their feedback on that funder if it is a very new funder?
Correct. Correct. Exactly. That's a good point. That's a great point. We'll take a couple of questions. Kavita, Bhavna have some questions. Kavita asks for the DST Power Fellowship. Isn't that the SERB? I think the SERB Power for Women Fellowship, which heavily depends on computational tools, a project on computational tools. Can we ask only a high-end computer system? Let's come back to the initial, like we opened with this case study of buying just one massive equipment. So is it risky, she says? Can we just ask for one big workstation?
Yeah, so Power Fellowship, it only gives research grant of 10 lakhs. And you don't have even to declare what you're going to use that 10 lakh for. You can just say, I want to use it to build capacity of research in my lab, right? So beforehand, you will say that these are the equipments you have. You want to further build capacity, right, in certain areas which are missing, because research grant is the most flexible grant. So see, that is where the beauty lies. And I always emphasize when I talk on any platform I get, that why are we, so much constrained in those budget heads? For example, under JC Bose Fellowship, research grant, a funder can use that money for equipment, recurring international travel, national travel, human resource hiring. It's good that now we have for women also Power Fellowship, under which 10 lakh of the research grant money is fully flexible. We should create more and more schemes like that, because we are actually, by limiting, we are increasing the work for the funders, because people keep on writing their problems and telling them, please allow me this.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So,
transfer from this budget head to this budget head, and 3 months later some circular will come, you're allowed to transfer or not allowed to transfer, etc. Absolutely.
Right. So we
Bhavna
should
asks, okay, yes, absolutely, Vandana, that's a good point. Bhavna asks, the funds are not used on time, manpower, because of a delay in hiring. Can the PI use that fund for consumables? Do we have to return the fund? This is the same shifting across budget heads. Can you ask manpower to go into consumables if you couldn't hire?
So funder will ask you, a justification for it. Provide that justification. If it is acceptable, it is fine. If it is not acceptable, then they will just ask you to give back that money. So instead of that, I mean, there are multiple ways by which you can use that balance money. If ask for extension of project, right? That is one. Or if extension of project in some schemes is absolutely not possible and you have a balance in that equipment, but you do need time also. If you have time also to utilize that balance money, then do make a request as early as possible with the absolute convincing facts. And also if those facts can be endorsed by your institute. For example, your institute might have promised you some internal funds which didn't come to you, and you were hoping you will utilize it. So why don't you provide a support letter, right, from your institute, and then make a request? This is called reappropriation of funds from one head to another head, because it is all recurring money, right? Recurring money from HR to consumable. It is possible within the funding permissible policies.
Wonderful, Vandana, wonderful. The clarity of your thought and your domain expertise, and the fact that you called something like research grant management the beauty of research grant management. I mean, it shows your passion on your job. So we have one more question and then we'll wrap up. But Sendhu Raja asks, who is the ownership of international funding? In the sense, like, if a government scientist shares a report and the data, does it have to go through the host institute?
Okay, so when the award is to be generated, there will be an agreement made, right? In that agreement, it will be defined who will own the research output. In terms of, I mean, usually the inventors or the people who work, researchers, they are always given a right to publish. But also, all those things, who will own it, it needs to be defined in that agreement. If you are just blindly taking the money from the international funder, that is not actually at all a good idea. Spend some time. If this you have to do, right? If there are no other people in your organization to assist, then do read those agreements. And if there is no clarity, ask those people who are dealing with the award letters that who will own the research output of this. Can I patent it? So in the patent is itself a clause. If they say you cannot patent it, it means they are not considering you owner of that research output.
Okay, so that's the reading between the lines. So Vandana, I will take Meghna Krishnadas's question next, but one thing I want to ask you, there are such few RDO offices functioning at the scale of IISER Pune or NCBS, let's be honest. So is there a way that a researcher, a PI, independent PI at a state university can use their contingency to actually pay for these services to understand their grants better? Are there any such?
Beautiful suggestion you have given. Institute may have right to the overheads fund, right?
Yes.
But if few PIs in the institute think to pool their contingency and hire a personnel, they can do that.
And so there are people in your space who will be freelance consulting. And
so what we usually do, once in a year, we organize a scientific project management training for 1 week. It's really rigorous and intensive training. We provided for 1 week to researchers, research administrators, all scientists, so whosoever wants to understand. And after that completion of training, that group is still active. So any change in the policy we share, and any effect of that policy is where we cross-talk. If one organization has resolved those errors, is where we help each other. So that you're building a community of RMs. And also,
so it's very clear that there's so much more to it. And to expect a PI to read between the lines that you cannot patent could mean you don't own this piece of work. One would need an expert.
Yeah.
So this is a group that maybe they can get in touch with you if they want to contact people. This is a great idea to pool contingency funds and make life easier for everybody. Till you wait till an RDO happens at your institute. So Meghna says, moving funds across budget heads for DBT, DST doesn't allow flexibility in HR money. Is this changing? We talked about human resource moving, right? Like, can we use that for consumables or something? She says DBT, DST in the past have been quite inflexible.
They see DBT, I mean, these were all overloaded people. They were simply ignoring the request, right? So that is where
that's
I am saying that if in the sanction order, if DBT thinks to have a more flexibility, with, and you also, just asking cursory that can I do that, instead of you asking that it is urgently required and along with supporting letters. See, I have seen it is possible. I have facilitated that, but in last 2 to 3 years, I saw that they have become more rigid. They don't want to do that because, just like changing government guidelines is a lot of work at our end in the education institute, it is also at their end also.
Yeah, definitely.
So that is where
Definitely.
it is only time is what is influencing all those things.
So we should not take a lack of a response to mean no.
Yeah.
It's probably just time.
Yeah, time, and maybe, they have on the DST side, the program advisors have indicated a time when they are available on their desk to take calls.
I see.
Or at that time, and having a word prior will help.
So this time is given on their website and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is when you all also call them.
Yeah.
Is that so? Okay.
Yeah.
So Vandana, there's a perfect note to end, and it's Bishwajit, one of our colleagues, writing into the chat window, says, you smile when I tell you this. He says, can we make an FAQ for each head in sanction order? I don't know about each head in sanction order, but something India Bioscience can work on is putting out a resource booklet with research management professionals like you in India with an FAQ on all of this.
Right.
Because
So,
even
it's a
I'm
good
talking to
idea.
you, there's
It's
so
a
many
good
questions
idea.
and so much clarity.
Right. So India Bioscience, I know, has put 2 very brilliant book on sources of funding. And this is also a good idea on putting up on RM, which we can say RM facilitation, right?
Yes.
So part of it, lot of information is actually on the funders website, and some of it is actually practical dealing information.
Yes.
Right? But a lot,
Yes.
it is so that people who are, working for some years in the field, they will actually catch it very fast. For people who are just entering the field, they'll still need hand holding and training. So definitely a resource like that would be helpful.
That's one. And I must say the funding booklets are all a lot of work by Manjula, who's right here. And now when I'm suggesting another booklet, Manjula might want to put her video off. But there's another nice comment that Vishwajit says, which sums up this conversation. Can we have a Q&A type engagement with Vandana beyond YI Huddle? And you've really been that person in the last 1 hour, Vandana, because we are somehow all navigating blindly through this space, and the clarity and the knowledge that you had. I think every PI basically now says we want, a person like Vandana to be in our lab.
Right. No, that's really, I'm grateful to you for that comment. And I believe that if knowledge is stagnant, it is worthless. So it should be shared, and that is what I'm always open to.
That's wonderful. So one thing we can do is put out this kind of research facilitation Q&A book together.
Yeah.
It'll have to be updated regularly because terms and everything will change. We can work out a model where we do that. And this huddle was really about bringing such conversations to the table.
Yeah.
And I think that comment by Bishwajit sort of sums it up. So right on time and close to ending. Thank you, Suchi, for putting the feedback form in the chat window. Please do give us your feedback. Manjula's put a link to the book, as you can see as well. That's how India Bioscience functions. Thank you, Vandana.
Most welcome. Thank you, Karishma. And thank
this was really wonderful, so much. I'm telling you, I ran a research group for 5 years and I didn't know 90% of this information.
Right. Yeah.
And I can see our colleagues are nodding in unison.
That's
so
wonderful.
I'll just extend one thing, Vandana. If they have questions that come to us, we'll pass them on to you by email. And
you can share actually my contact with the people who are facing the problem. So they can contact me directly. So even though, they don't know me, so that is where they'll get to know me also. And some questions, related to certain aspects of the accounting and all is where I can pass it on to the team.
Yes, so exactly.
Just a chain is where it is helping other people, because we cannot overload funders and with everything, right? So
Very true.
we'll be happy to help.
And particularly, I feel maybe it's also a personal thing that for there's so many university faculty and faculty who don't even have such an arrangement in their institute. They're clearly disadvantaged when trying to navigate diverse sources of funding. And the idea of taking it on yourself to make sure all the checks and balances are met, it's very daunting.
Right. And also, sometimes like one of my SPM training participants, she learned from here and went back. So what she learned, she was telling it to them and they were not getting convinced. So
Yes.
then she again contacted me and I told her further based on what they were giving queries, is where it helped her to convince them. So that builds the trust. Because usually it is felt that researchers are more of dictating people that this is what funder has told, do it, right? And
exactly.
they are averse to people who are managing it. They are also accountable to the CAG audit. They have to answer. So somewhere a bridge needs to be developed. So if their queries are resolved, then they are also forthcoming to help.
Yeah, absolutely. The relationship will take trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And most of us will go to a research development office expecting facilitation.
Exactly.
But they will also have limitations. So the conversation will be both ways.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll try and keep this going at IndiaBioscience, Vandana.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Karishma.
Thank you. Well, just a second, Vandana. They were taking a group pic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
May I request everyone to turn on their cameras? I mean, if possible, just take a group picture quickly.
Thank you, Manjula. And just to share what's our next YI Huddle, we usually do this, Vandana, so that people know what's coming up next. Next month, you can come back to us for another exciting conversation, which will be on research documentation and reproducibility. When you start building a group, extremely relevant, just as research funding was. And we are joined by Bernd from EMBO. And Divya Kumar from Mysore will be moderating, interlocuting this conversation. It promises to be fascinating, and we'll hear about what EMBO's views are on the very current state of ensuring reproducibility in life science research. So hope to see you all there. Thank you very much for your time and engagement. I mean, the questions were free flowing in this session and all very relevant. So thank you for that. And you can get to our website and give us more feedback as well. So have a very good evening. Have a very good weekend. And see you soon.
Is this recording would be shared with people who probably didn't attend it, because few people wrote to me saying that they were really hoping that this conversation can be seen later.
Yes, we put it under dispatches on our website.
Perfect. Great.
It's free for all. Absolutely. So have a good weekend, everybody. See you on the other side. Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you, Vandana. Bye-bye. Yeah.